10 years I spent studying abroad. The day I finally graduated and came home, the bastard son, Ethan Vance, stormed into my family's estate with a pack of influencers and started smashing the place to pieces. He was live streaming, running a smear campaign claiming I was some kind of gigolo. My fiancée, Chloe Jennings, flashed her marriage certificate to Ethan, legitimizing his claim. My own sister, Sophia Vance, born of the same mother and father as me, stood in front of the camera and backed him up. Ethan is the only brother I have. Then, looking straight at the lens, she added, Caleb Shaw is just some kept man. I don't know him. I beat Ethan to a pulp, then gave my executive assistant a simple order. Issue a press release immediately. Announce the change in leadership at Vance Holdings. Freeze all assets registered to Sophia and Ethan Vance. And terminate all partnerships with the Jennings family. Effective immediately. After a month of back-to-back all-nighters, I'd finally purge the rot from inside Vance Holdings and secure my control. I decided to take the weekend off, but I hadn't gotten nearly enough sleep before my assistant, David Chun, was shaking me awake. He was sweating, catching his breath. Your brother, Ethan, he's back with a group of people. They injured one of the house staff and forced their way into the estate. He paused, gulping for air. He's insisting you're here illegally and is trying to throw you out. I was wide awake in an instant, tying the belt of my silk robe as I got out of bed, annoyed. The house manager, Mr. Peterson, who'd come with David, added with a sneer, and that backstabbing snake Sophia is with him. They brought a camera crew of influencers to live stream them catching you. The homewrecker. He spat the word. Your fiancée, Ms. Jennings, is here too. I barely lifted an eyelid, letting out a dismissive scoff. Where are the estate's security guards? I asked David. They've got them contained in the grand hall, stopping them from getting any further inside. David's face broke into a wide grin. I've already called the cops. They should be here in about 10 minutes, he said, his smile turning wicked. We need to be quick. A corner of my mouth turned up. I picked up my smart glasses from the nightstand, synced them to my phone, and walked out. A month ago, I'd returned to the States with my master's degree to take over the family business. My scumbag father, Mark Vance, who was forced to relinquish his position as CEO and 90% of his personal assets, hated my guts for it. Ethan was his illegitimate son. His little stunt today was almost certainly on my father's orders, probably to confirm whether the person who flew back into the country yesterday was my mother, Eleanor Shaw. 10 years ago, my mother discovered my father was having an affair with his secretary, Jennifer Rollins. She also discovered he'd passed off their bastard son, Ethan, as my fraternal twin, brazenly raising him in our home. To keep Ethan from ever inheriting the company, my mother moved swiftly to arrange everything for my succession. But before she could kick my father out of the company, she was in a car crash that left her in a coma. I was promptly shipped off to a school abroad. He called it studying overseas, but in another era, they would have called it exile. 3 months after I left, my uncle arranged for my mother to be transferred to a top facility in Europe for better treatment. She was in a coma for 5 years. After she woke, she endured years of grueling physical therapy to finally recover her health. But she never lost control. The 67% majority stake in Vance Holdings had always been, and remained, in her hands. That's how I was able to inherit the company so smoothly and, per her instructions, strip my father of nearly all his assets. It was only natural he wouldn't take it lying down. As we turned into the corridor leading to the grand hall, David whispered, Ethan's crew is trapped in there. They're trashing the place. Mr. Peterson overheard and rolled his eyes so hard I thought they'd get stuck. Let them. The more they break, the more time they'll do making license plates. But he brought hired muscle this time, David said, his expression turning serious. He barely scraped by with a community college degree before jumping into showbiz. He built this whole trust fund baby persona and got a legion of brain-dead followers. His live stream has almost 200,000 viewers right now. The other stuff is easy to handle, but public opinion is a nightmare. I stopped, frowning as I pulled up Ethan's live stream. Tell all our security guards, I said casually, when the time comes, I want them beaten within an inch of their lives. Just make sure they don't die. David and Mr. Peterson froze for a second, then both broke into relieved smiles. That's him. Ethan screamed, hyped up like he'd just done a line of coke. Look, everyone, that's the gigolo I was telling you about, Caleb Shaw. He panned his phone around. You know where we are? The Greenwich Estate on North Maple. This is my family's ancestral home. This parasite, Caleb Shaw, tricked my mother into signing over the deed and secretly transferred it into his name. The nerve on this guy is unbelievable. The influencers with him immediately pointed their phones at me. My 12 personal bodyguards stormed the hall, joining the 10 guards already at the doors. In a flash, they had the situation under control. Ethan, his influencers, and his hired thugs were all forced to their knees, their faces contorted with rage. Sophia and Chloe were huddled to the side, completely stunned. Panic flashed across Ethan's face. He started yelling, "Caleb Shaw, let me go. You shameless homewrecker. You scammed my family out of our house and our money, and you have the audacity to act like this? You're dead." I looked down, tightened the knot on my robe, and walked over, slapping him hard across the face. "Watch your mouth. Who am I? You shameless parasite. You hit me." Smack. I backhanded him with my other hand. "Who am I?" His cheeks were already swelling. Tears welled in his eyes. "You bastard, you actually hit me." Tougher than he looked. I shook out my stinging hand, slipped off my leather house slipper, and started whipping him with it. His goons, held down by my security, flinched with every strike. The influencers stared at each other, horrified. Sophia and Chloe were furious, but didn't dare say a word, their faces twisted in disgust. The viewer count on the live stream skyrocketed. Catching a cheater is old news. But the Greenwich estate on North Maple is one of the most famous properties in the tri-state area, a landmark estate, our own little slice of Gilded Age history. It was a story in itself. When I first tuned in, he had less than 200,000 viewers. In just a few minutes, it had jumped by another 50,000 and was still climbing. The influencers Ethan brought scrambled backward, screaming. He used all his strength to push me away and roll aside, grabbing his phone with its shattered screen. "Whoever gets this shameless parasite, I'll give you $100,000, he yelled, trying to work up the online mob. "Cash, the second you grab him. You all see this? This guy's out of control. He's squatting in my family home, and now he's assaulting me. This was supposed to be my wedding house, a gift from my grandfather." I folded my arms, a smirk playing on my lips as I looked at his bruised, swollen face. The bastard son of a man who married into money has the nerve to try and claim the Shaw family estate? You really think sharing a last name on some documents gives you a right to the inheritance? You're not just pathetic. You're naive. My full-blooded sister, Sophia, and my fiancée, Chloe, stood hand in hand behind the influencers. They stared daggers at me, their expressions ugly. Probably worried I'd spill more secrets. Sophia patted Chloe's shoulder and turned to face the cameras with forced composure. "Hello, everyone. I'm sure you all know who I am. Ethan is the only brother I have. This shameless parasite, Caleb Shaw, not only scammed my mother out of our family's ancestral home, but he also cleaned out her accounts, taking over $600 million in liquid assets." As she spoke, her eyes flickered toward me, the mockery in them completely undisguised. "Idiot," I thought to myself, then said coolly, "Sophia, have you told your followers about how you've embraced a homewrecker as your new mother?" The color drained from her face. Her eyes burned with pure hatred. Chloe, scowling with irritation, pulled out a marriage certificate and held it up to the cameras. "I'm Ethan Vance's wife, Chloe Jennings. Ethan is the sole heir to Vance Holdings. This is the Greenwich estate, the Vance family's ancestral home. I can attest to that." Her voice was shrill as she played the part of the victim, standing by Ethan's side. Judging by her performance, Sophia must have really done a number on her. The comment section of the live stream exploded. "Wait, Caleb said Ethan Vance is an illegitimate son? Spill the tea. Holy crap, that Greenwich estate is worth a fortune. This is some premium billionaire drama. Did Caleb just say the CEO married into the family and Ethan is the bastard son? Sophia Vance calling him mistress mom? I'm so confused. I thought this was about catching a cheater. How did it turn into a high society scandal?" Grabbing my popcorn, I skimmed the comments for a moment. Ethan was once again restrained by my guards. He couldn't move, his face twisted like a dirty rag, his eyes bulging as he struggled. I smirked and walked toward him. "Caleb Shaw, you hit me again and you're finished. My dad will not let you get away with this." Ethan screamed in terror, the blood draining from his face. I gave a nod to my guards. The moment they let Ethan up, I grabbed his arm, twisted, and threw him over my shoulder, slamming him onto the marble floor. Thud! Before he could even process what happened, my foot was on his chest. Cold sweat beaded on his forehead. The entire hall fell silent. David and Mr. Peterson, flanked by 2 guards, quickly moved to my side. The livestream audience went wild. The comments were a blur. "Damn, why was that kinda hot?" My guess, a classic switched at birth story. The real heir versus the fake one. "We don't care if he's a homewrecker or not. We just want the billionaire tea. If you're gonna spill it all. Calling it now. Ethan is the fake heir. Caleb is the real one." I ignored the online chatter, my gaze landing on Sophia. Her pupils constricted. She tremblingly pointed a finger at me and shrieked, "Caleb Shaw, you shameless parasite, get off my brother. I've already called my dad. He's on his way. This house is not something you can even dream of touching. I suggest you sign it back over, or else." Her tone dripped with menace and disgust, as if I really were some low-life con artist. The irony was suffocating. We were born from the same womb. But she didn't just want me dead. She wanted our mother dead, too. The car crash 10 years ago wasn't an accident. It happened because she secretly ran to Mark Vance and told him about our mother's plans. When he exiled me overseas, she was the one whispering suggestions in his ear. The Jennings family played their part as well. During my decade abroad, every near-death experience I had could be traced back to her. She stopped being my sister a long time ago. I pushed the thoughts away with a contemptuous snort. "Breaking and entering," I said coldly. "Vandalism of private property. What a coincidence." I called the cops, too. As for Mark Vance and Jennifer Rollins, a cheating scumbag and a shameless mistress. Are you sure they have the guts to show their faces here? My mother, Eleanor Shaw, had a special welcome gift waiting for them. "What right do you have to call the police?" Sophia screamed, completely losing her composure. "My mother's last name is Shaw, yes, but the woman you're talking about, Jennifer, is just my father's executive assistant. Caleb Shaw, you son of a bitch, stop spreading lies." I shot her a look like she was something I'd scraped off my shoe, then crouched down, grabbing Ethan by the hair and forcing his head back. Smack! I hit him again hard. "Who am I?" I asked with a smile. "And is it or is it not a fact that Mark Vance is a cheater?" Ethan was dazed, his eyes filled with helpless tears as he shook his head. The livestream viewership broke 500,000. The comments piled up like a snowstorm. "Hold on, isn't Mark Vance famous for being the perfect, devoted husband? This is the real drama. His whole brand is built on being madly in love with his wife. Every product from their cosmetics line was supposedly developed for her. And he cheated? This is better than any soap opera. More. Give us more." Everyone in the room was staring at Ethan. He opened his mouth, stammered for a moment, but couldn't get a single word out. "Not talking." I sneered, hitting him again. "I'll ask one more time. Who am I?" Before he could answer, I took off my slipper and started hitting him again. The hall was silent except for the rhythmic, slapping sound. Sophia and Chloe were held back by the guards, forced to watch as I turned Ethan's face into a swollen mess. I didn't stop until my arm was sore. I shoved his head away, stood up, and gave him a kick for good measure. He slid a good 3 feet across the polished floor. The influencer, still filming, let out a terrified shriek. Chloe and Sophia's faces went pale as they rushed to Ethan's side. The other influencers huddled together, trembling, the live stream camera shaking so badly it looked like they were on a boat in a storm. I watched the scene dispassionately, taking a silk handkerchief from Mr. Peterson to wipe my hands. "Tally up the damages," I said calmly. "Everyone who broke in here today is paying for it in full." Mr. Peterson's eyes narrowed into a smile. "Don't you worry, sir. We have the receipts for every single piece in this haul. The total value is close to 10 million. That's enough to send them all to prison for a few years." He leaned in, lowering his voice. "And per Ms. Shaw's instructions, all the priceless antiques were replaced with high-quality replicas." I raised an eyebrow, unable to suppress a smile of my own. With Eleanor Shaw back in the country, my scumbag father and his mistress would soon be doing hard time. Sophia must have overheard us. Her eyes, filled with venom, darted toward me, the hand holding her phone trembling. "Dad, you and Mom need to get to the estate now. Caleb's people are beating Ethan to death. He has bodyguards." The moment she hung up, my father's figure appeared in the courtyard outside the hall. He'd brought Jennifer Rollins, the mistress who'd had plastic surgery to look like my mother, and 20 of his own security guards. They flooded into the room and immediately surrounded me. My father's face was a cold mask. He gave a chilling order. "Take him. Dead or alive, I don't care." I glanced up, a mocking smile playing on my lips. "Well, it looks like the whole cast is here. Let the show begin." My father knew the value of this estate. From the day Ethan and I were born, he'd been trying to trick my mother into signing it over to Ethan. But Eleanor never budged. After her accident 10 years ago, when my uncle moved her overseas, he kept her location and condition a tightly guarded secret. My father, assuming she had died abroad, couldn't wait to have his mistress remade in my mother's image. He might have fooled the public, but he couldn't fool my uncle, who knew the truth. My return and aggressive takeover of the company had sent my father into a panic. Otherwise, he never would have been brazen enough to try and take the estate by force. And letting this idiot Ethan livestream the whole thing, that was him shooting himself in the foot. The CEO of Vance Holdings had carefully cultivated a public persona as a deeply devoted husband, to be exposed by his favorite son. It was a beautiful, karmic justice. The security he brought was clearly professional. They faced off against my team, their presence just as intimidating. A few of them looked like they had shady pasts. I gave David a subtle look, then addressed my father casually. Brought a whole army, did you? Hoping to bully me into changing the share transfer agreement? You've seriously miscalculated. As your son, I've already taken the liberty of finding a nice, quiet place for you to retire. You insolent brat, my father roared, his face trembling with rage. He turned to his men. Didn't you hear me? Get him, dead or alive. The two security teams clashed instantly. The live stream audience was stunned into silence. Then the comments went into overdrive. Did the CEO just call him an insolent brat? So it's not about a homewrecker. It's the illegitimate son, backed by his powerful father, trying to steal the inheritance. Wait, Caleb mentioned a share transfer agreement. Wouldn't a change in ownership at Vance Holdings have to be disclosed to the public? Just check the company's SEC filings. Caleb Shaw is the new majority shareholder with 52% of the stock. What a show. I sat down in an armchair with only Mr. Peterson by my side. He was my mother's most trusted aide, a former Special Forces operative from the first generation of elite soldiers. He could handle himself. My security team quickly overpowered my father's men. Soon enough, he too was on his knees on the floor. Jennifer and Sophia screamed. Chloe was white as a sheet. The influencers Ethan had brought were huddled in a corner, looking like they'd seen a ghost. I adjusted the smart glasses on my nose and let out a cold, internal laugh. Why so quiet, Mr. Vance? I taunted. If you don't want to talk, maybe I should tell everyone the truth. My father's face twisted in rage, his hand shaking as he pointed at me. Jennifer opened her mouth, her voice weak. It really isn't appropriate for you to be living here. This is a Vance family home, after all, and your name isn't Vance. Ethan might have exaggerated a bit, she continued, but he wasn't wrong, was he? Like hell he wasn't. I snapped, my patience gone. Who the hell do you think you are? No one gave you permission to speak. A cheap mistress who slept her way into this family actually thinks she's somebody. Caleb, my father bellowed, his face turning purple. Where are your manners? Who taught you to speak to her like that? Don't you forget that I am your... He choked back the rest of the sentence, his face turning the color of liver. Sophia and Ethan visibly relaxed. Chloe seized the opportunity to rush to Ethan's side, helping him up with a pained expression, her eyes red with sympathy. I shot a contemptuous glance at my father, a slight smile on my lips. I have no manners. My own father cheated on my mother, then brought his bastard son home and tried to pass him off as my twin. With a father like that, what manners could I possibly have? A dog probably ate them. The live stream chat erupted again. Holy yes. I thought it was a fake air story, but it's the son of the guy who married in with his bastard versus the legitimate son of the matriarch. That mistress has some nerve, trying to act like a parent to the real son. All future celebrity scandals must meet this standard of drama. Who cares about catching cheaters when you can get prime billionaire drama like this? My father was speechless. Sophia, furious and flustered, started screaming. That's enough, Caleb. He's still your father, your elder. Is that any way to speak to him? You can't live in this house. If you know what's good for you, you'll sign over to Ethan. If not, don't blame us for what happens next. I gave her a sidelong glance, then leaned back, propping my chin on my hand with a smile. And what happens next? Do tell. A sister who dotes on a bastard while treating her real brother like an enemy must have all sorts of clever little plans. I'm all ears. Sophia choked on her words, her face cycling through shades of red and white. It was quite a sight. Just then, 2 uniformed officers and 7 or 8 heavily armed tactical officers burst into the hall. Even David was taken aback by the tactical team. He looked at me, embarrassed. When I called it in, I might have mentioned there were a lot of intruders causing damage. That's not filing a false report, is it? No. Go to the West Wing and check if my mother is awake, I instructed. I stood up smoothly and addressed the lead officer. I'm the one who called. These people injured my housekeeper, broke into my home, destroyed my property, and live-streamed the whole thing, slandering me as a homewrecker. I pointed at Jennifer Rollins. And this, I said with a smirk, is the wealthy older woman they claim is my sugar mama. The audience on the live stream collectively lost their minds. So what guys are so hot? This drama is insane. I have a feeling today is going to be legendary. I'm so jealous of the cops getting to see this unfold live. Don't end the stream. Unfortunately for them, their prayers went unanswered. The moment the police arrived, I'd activated a signal jammer. When the officers requested that all streams be shut down, I turned the jammer off and cast a casual glance at my father. His face was as black as ink. Sophia, Ethan, Chloe, and the mistress Jennifer stood together, each one looking more miserable than the last. They had used the threat of calling the police as a bluff. I had actually called them. "Can someone explain what exactly is going on here?" The lead officer asked, his voice stern as he surveyed the wreckage in the hall. "Home invasion, robbery, assault. These are serious felonies." Just as I was about to speak, my mother, Eleanor Shaw, entered the hall, dressed in a tasteful and elegant dress, leaning lightly on David's arm. "Caleb, what's happening?" she asked, her voice calm but carrying. "Why are there so many police officers in our home?" At the sound of her voice, my father looked up as if he'd seen a ghost. His jaw dropped, and his lips began to tremble. Jennifer Rollins swayed on her feet, her face as white as a sheet. Sophia flinched and looked at the floor, every muscle in her body tensed. I took in their reactions with a cold, internal smile and hurried to my mother's side. "Mom, you should be resting." After waking from her coma, it had taken her 3 years of intensive rehab to get back to normal. She was still physically weak and couldn't overexert herself. She'd just flown in last night. She probably hadn't even adjusted to the time difference. I helped her to the armchair. My father opened his mouth, but after a few sputtering attempts, no words came out. Jennifer looked utterly defeated. For nearly a decade, she had paraded around as Mrs. Vance, a high society wife with a face surgically altered to resemble my mother's. Now that the original was back, her time as the mistress was over, and it wasn't going to end well for her. Sophia was biting her lip, her hands clenched into tight fists, staring at my mother and me with a toxic cocktail of envy, jealousy, and hate. I ignored her venom and spoke directly to the police officer. Ethan Vance led this group of people, broke down the gate to my home for no reason, and began destroying my property. They were also live streaming a smear campaign, claiming I'm a homewrecker. With that, I gave a subtle nod to Mr. Peterson. Sophia was the firstborn. When she was a child, my mother doted on her, even considering training her as the successor. But she chose to throw it all away. I could never understand why she hated me. Not until after my mother's accident. I overheard her one day, complaining at my mother's bedside, calling her a selfish woman for holding onto the company's shares, saying she was a failure as a wife and a mother. It was in that moment I understood. She had been completely brainwashed by our father and his parents. Deep down, she rejected my mother's identity as a powerful, independent woman. She believed a woman's place was to cede power and be a dutiful, supportive wife. She hated our mother's strength, and she resented me for carrying our mother's surname. Here is the security footage, and we also have a recording of the live stream, Mr. Peterson said, handing over a tablet with the evidence, along with an itemized list of the damages. He also produced the deed to the estate. Sophia craned her neck to see it. When she saw my name on the deed, she shrieked to my mother, "Why would you give the house to Caleb? I'm your daughter, too." "Because you chose a homewrecker for a mother and you treat a bastard like a treasure," I retorted, my voice laced with disgust. "Sophia, you knew Jennifer was a mistress. You knew she had plastic surgery to look like our own mother, yet you treat her with more affection than you ever showed your real mom. You don't want our mother, but you still want her assets. You have some nerve." "What bastard?" Chloe interjected angrily. Mark Vance looked like he was suffering from extreme constipation, desperate to speak, but unable to. Jennifer hung her head low. So she was capable of feeling shame? Funny, she didn't seem ashamed when she was sleeping with my father, having his child, and then dumping that child on my mother to raise. Ethan's face was dark, but he didn't dare lash out. Chloe might be a fool, but she wasn't a complete idiot. Realizing that everything I'd said was true, her face went cold. She dropped Ethan's arm and stepped back as if she'd touched something filthy, wiping her hands on her dress. I glanced over, a cold smile touching my lips. "Didn't Ethan tell you? He's the son of Mark Vance and Jennifer Rollins. A bastard. My mother only ever had one son." Chloe looked as if she'd swallowed a fly. She took a few more steps back, her teeth clenched. Ethan saw her reaction, and his face contorted with rage. And this was just the beginning. The day Chloe heard I was returning to the country, she ran off and married Ethan. By my count, they'd been married for exactly 3 days. The Jennings family was banking on an alliance with a legitimate heir. An illegitimate son could only inherit anything if his father held the power and the shares. But Mark Vance had neither. The police officers all wore the same expression of people trying not to react to incredible gossip, either looking up at the ceiling or down at their shoes. With the situation clarified, the police began cuffing Ethan and his entire crew. My mother glanced at Mark Vance, then spoke in a slow, deliberate voice. "Officers, I have another crime to report." The lead officer turned, quickly pulling out a notepad. The officer filming aimed his camera at her. If they hadn't been so professionally trained, I'm sure they would have burst out laughing. Vance Holdings was one of New York's biggest corporate taxpayers. Two identical-looking misses. Vance S. in the same room? This was a scandal of epic proportions. I want to press charges against Mark Vance and Jennifer Rollins for conspiracy to commit murder. And I want to charge Mark Vance and Jennifer Rollins with embezzling massive sums from my company. Here is the evidence. My mother took a tablet from Mr. Peterson and handed it to the officer. The day I'd returned, I had already submitted the evidence of my father's embezzlement to the SEC. We were expecting the results of their investigation any day now. As the officer took the tablet, Mark Vance finally snapped. "Eleanor, what is the meaning of this?" he yelled, his neck muscles bulging. "Don't you dare accuse me of things I didn't do. The car crash was ruled an accident 10 years ago." "Why are you so agitated?" my mother replied, her lips curving into a serene, almost detached smile. "The police are right here. They will determine whether it was an accident or not. Mark, everything you do leaves a trace. I have all the evidence of you hiring someone to kill me, so you could inherit my fortune." The influencers, now witnesses to a far more serious crime, were speechless. The police officer's eyes were practically gleaming, wishing she would say more. I turned my head to watch the undisguised despair wash over my father and his mistress's faces. A heavy weight I'd carried for a decade finally lifted from my chest. We had waited 10 years for this day, and it was worth the wait. Soon, after a quick review of the evidence my mother provided, the lead officer instructed his team to cuff Mark Vance and his mistress as well. "Eleanor, this is slander," my father screamed, struggling against the officers. "I know you hate me for cheating, but filing a false accusation is a crime. I won't let you get away with this." He was still fighting, throwing out empty threats. "Don't think that just because you gave this little bastard the shares, he can actually run the company. Without me, he's nothing but a figurehead." The expressions on Ethan and Sophia's faces changed again, their eyes now full of poison as they stared at me. I shot them a triumphant smile, which only served to twist their faces further with rage. The police took everyone away. I escorted my mother to the dining room and gave David his instructions. "Notify our legal team and the banks. Freeze and reclaim all assets in Sophia and Ethan Vance's names. Terminate all contracts and partnerships with the Jennings family. And have the PR department monitor online sentiment closely." Ethan's live stream had nearly 1 million viewers. A high society scandal spreads faster than celebrity gossip. We needed to be ready to intervene. It wasn't time to release all the dirt I had on Ethan. Not yet. In the 10 years my mother and I were gone, my father and his mistress had spared no expense paving Ethan's way in the entertainment industry. A prison sentence wouldn't last forever. I was going to make sure that when he got out, his life would be a living hell. My mother's lawsuit against Jennifer to reclaim their shared marital assets had been filed last week. The lawyers had already petitioned the court to freeze her assets. Whether Jennifer walked out of that police station or not, every penny she'd coaxed out of my father over the years would be coming back to us. Eleanor gracefully took a sip from her cup of herbal tea, a smile in her eyes. "Have you fired all the people Mark placed in the company? Sophia wants to call him mistress or mother? Let her. For all the years they tried to erase your existence, your uncle will host a gala to formally introduce you to society." I nearly choked on my tea. "Do we have to be in such a rush?" I asked quietly. "I've already fired a lot of the senior management, but the subsidiaries the Vances ran into the ground will take time to clean up. My father hadn't even been convicted yet. Throwing a party felt like celebrating a halftime. What's the rush? I never said we'd do it right away," my mother said, looking at me with amusement. "We'll wait until Mark is formally indicted and the case is handed over to the D. Then we can use the gala to publicly sever all ties with the Vance family." She paused, a knowing look on her face. "Are you afraid I'm going to set you up on dates? Is marriage really that terrifying?" I nodded emphatically. No one, man or woman, wants to be trapped in a marriage for their money. By afternoon, we had an update from the police. Mark Vance and Jennifer Rollins were being held on charges of corporate embezzlement. The attempted murder charge required further investigation. But my mother and I were prepared. The only thing waiting for them was a long list of convictions and a lifetime behind bars. Ethan and his entourage of influencers and thugs were also officially arrested. The damages to the estate totaled $15 million. Under state law, that was felony destruction of property. Sophia and Chloe hadn't physically broken anything, so they were released after a stern lecture from the police. When my phone rang with Sophia's number, I knew she was about to lose it. I answered, put it on speaker, and set it on the table. "Caleb Shaw, why didn't you just die overseas?" she shrieked. "Grandma and Grandpa were right. You carry the Shaw name. You were never really part of the Vance family. Don't think for a second that just because Eleanor signed the shares over to you, Vance Holdings is yours. The company's name is Vance, not Shaw." I pursed my lips, looking at my mother with a pang of sympathy. Ever since Sophia's betrayal, my mother had harbored a nagging doubt that Sophia wasn't her biological child. She had several DNA tests done, and only when they all came back positive did she finally accept the heartbreaking truth. My mother put down her cup of tea, her face a mask of cold indifference. Vance Holdings was never a Vance company. The startup capital came from a loan I took out against this very estate. I let him put his name on it to save his pride. What's mine is mine to give, and I can give it to whomever I please. It is not your place to question my decisions. There was a moment of silence on the other end, and then Sophia hung up. There was nothing left for us to say. All of her assets were now frozen. The locks on her condo had been changed. She probably called me to vent her frustration after being locked out of her own home. But Sophia was stubborn. She didn't call me again for the next 2 days, nor did she try to contact my mother. On Monday, when I got to the office, David told me Chloe Jennings was asking to see me. He wanted to know if he should schedule a meeting. No need. She's just an ex-fiancée. I never even liked her. Chloe had been so smug when she stood by Ethan's side, waving that marriage certificate. Now, she was paying the price. She made her choice. It had nothing to do with me. I thought she'd give up after being rejected, but 3 days later, she was back, waiting for me outside the company building. My security team spotted her and blocked her path immediately. "Caleb Shaw, what right do you have to cancel the contracts with my family?" she screamed. "Do you have any idea how much money we've lost in the past few days because of you?" "Not my problem," I replied coolly. "As the CEO of this corporation, my job is to run a business, not a charity. You're not our only supplier, you know." I offered her a mocking smile from behind my security detail. "Instead of wasting your time stalking me, you should probably be out finding new clients. After all, you and Ethan are so in love." Shaw Industries was founded on pharmaceuticals. After my grandfather was posthumously exonerated and his name cleared, he resumed his practice as a doctor of traditional medicine. He gave my mother several of our family's ancestral formulas, ancient remedies and recipes for health and beauty, to start her business. Besides pharmaceuticals, the company also produces a line of cosmeceuticals. After years of growth, it now comprises 7 subsidiaries across multiple sectors. The Jennings family had started out after the war with a few clothing stores. Once they had some capital, they ventured into the cosmetics business. It did well at first, but as more domestic brands emerged and international giants entered the market, their products lost their edge. Chloe's grandfather, a shrewd businessman, retooled several production lines to focus on producing raw materials and packaging for other cosmetics companies. The switch saved their business. Unfortunately, Chloe's father had no head for business. Aside from the core industries his own father had built, every new venture he touched lost money. That was the real reason the Jennings family had arranged the engagement with ours. But Chloe had chosen Ethan. "Caleb, our families have known each other for generations. How can you be so ruthless? Aren't you afraid of being shunned by our entire social circle?" Chloe yelled, unwilling to give up. "And don't forget, I was engaged to you first." I was about to turn away, but her words made me pause. I looked back at her and laughed. I'd almost forgotten about that. You threw such a fit back then, crying, screaming, threatening to kill yourself. You even swore a solemn vow that if you ever came crawling back to me, you'd die a horrible death. Well, you don't have to die. Just watching the Jennings Corporation go bankrupt will be enough. Chloe's face was a mask of shock and fury. She lunged forward like a madwoman, trying to break through the guards to attack me. I didn't give her the chance. Flanked by my security, I walked away. During the years my mother was in a coma, before she was moved overseas, the Jennings family had been a great help to Mark Vance. Chloe herself played no small part in my exile. My return was about 2 things: taking down my scumbag father and dealing with the Jennings family. Their misfortune was my peace of mind. On Thursday morning, the NYPD released an official press statement. Ethan Vance and his influencer friends have been formally arrested for felony destruction of property due to the enormous value of the damages. The news exploded online, riding the wave of publicity, and, on my orders, David began leaking more of Ethan's dirty laundry. The kid had no real talent or connections. If it wasn't for my father's money paving the way, he would never have even gotten on camera. Jennifer Rollins was plain looking at best. The child she had with my father was equally average, the kind of face you'd immediately forget in a crowd. Now, with a police record and the public knowledge that he was a shameless bastard son, his career in showbiz was over, even if he ever got out of jail. I will make sure of that. My mother scrolled through the online comments. Release a statement from the company, she said calmly. The hearing for my lawsuit against Jennifer Rollins to reclaim our marital assets is next Monday. She was suing Jennifer to recover the assets and also suing my father for divorce. The two hearings were scheduled a day apart. If we were going to make a public statement, we might as well announce both at once. It would preempt any moves from our competitors. Shaw Industries manufactured essential medicines, and negative public opinion could be weaponized by rivals hiring online trolls to file complaints. Government regulators don't like complaints. They have to investigate them, which is a headache for everyone, especially for a major corporate taxpayer like us. I nodded and relayed the instructions to David, then looked at my mother with some concern. Grandma and Grandpa have been trying to see you for the past 2 days. My paternal grandparents adored Ethan. In their eyes, he was their only grandson because he carried the Vance name. I, with my mother's surname, was not one of them. There's no need to see them, my mother said, her face hardening with disgust. If it weren't for their help back then, that bastard son never would have set foot in our home. Don't you see them either? But you need to be careful of Sophia. She's been too quiet these last few days. She's definitely plotting something. I pursed my lips and agreed. Sophia didn't resent Ethan for being our father's spoiled favorite. Instead, she hated me, her own brother. I didn't understand it, but I would be on my guard. Ethan's public image was completely destroyed. The production studio my father had set up for him dissolved overnight. The reality shows he'd signed onto were now suing him for breach of contract. My father's reputation was in tatters, and the whole country was watching to see if my mother would get her assets back. Ironically, sales for our cosmeceutical line shot up. I assigned a team to keep an eye on Sophia while I continued cleaning out the rot in our subsidiaries and orchestrating the downfall of the Jennings family. Their liquid capital was all tied up in a failing AI subsidiary. Then, their main factory was exposed for tax evasion and health code violations. Within days, federal investigators were swarming the place. Chloe came to see me again. I'll handle her, Mr. Peterson said, his face a mask of contempt. I poured my mother another cup of tea and nodded with a smile. The Jennings family was getting exactly what they deserved. After 2 weeks of relentless work, the evidence for my father and Jennifer's murder-for-hire plot was confirmed, and the case was handed over to the district attorney's office. When my grandparents heard the news, they copied Ethan's playbook, hiring a few influencers and showing up at the estate to put on a pathetic, live-stream performance, begging to see my mother. The public had been feasting on the Vance family drama for weeks. Seeing the elders try the same stunt as the son, they tuned in with gusto. Within 5 minutes, the stream had over 500,000 viewers. Not even A-list celebrities get numbers that fast. I helped my mother to the front gate, then gave a nod to Mr. Peterson. Boost the stream on social media or activate the jammer? He asked, an amused eyebrow raised. The jammer, my mother said with a slight smile. But let's record our own video, just in case they try to claim we assaulted them. Mr. Peterson activated the signal jammer and slowly opened the massive iron gates. My grandparents, who had been wailing and crying for the cameras, immediately switched into attack mode the moment they saw my mother. Eleanor Shaw, you send your own husband to prison. Are you even human? My grandmother shrieked. Our son built that company. Why do you have to let someone with the name Shaw inherit it? My grandfather bellowed. You witch. You just can't stand to see the Vance family succeed. The influencers and a small crowd of onlookers who had gathered pricked up their ears. I glanced around and spotted Sophia hiding nearby, my brow furrowing instinctively. She truly was her grandparents' protege. Vicious and selfish, right to the core. My mother's face was stern, but her voice was calm as she responded. From its founding to its growth, that company was built with Shaw family money and Shaw family effort. If Mark Vance hadn't married me, the two of you would still be scratching a living out of the dirt for another 10 years before you could even dream of moving to the city. You bite the hand that feeds you. The rottenness in the Vance family runs deep. I will be divorcing Mark, and for every single thing you took from the Shaw family, I will be taking it back. After their dramatic display ended in a humiliating defeat, my grandparents left. They must have remembered how things used to be and feared my mother would truly leave them with nothing. A couple of days later, they packed their bags and moved back to their old house in the suburbs. With them gone, Sophia also disappeared from the radar. I almost thought she'd given up, but then I spotted her at the gala. My uncle, Dr. Julian Shaw had organized the event, inviting the city's elite. The Shaw family, after all, had a legacy stretching back over a century, one of New York's old money dynasties. The gala was not only to announce my position as the new heir, but also to declare that Vance Holdings would be officially renamed Shaw Industries. It was a definitive statement to put an end to the scandal my father and Ethan had created. I stood on the stage with my uncle, my eyes fixed on Sophia. She wouldn't have crashed this party without a malicious plan. I just didn't know if I was her target or if my mother was. I called David over and gestured discreetly toward Sophia, who was lurking in a corner. "Keep an eye on her," I whispered. "If she tries to poison the champagne, my life is on the line." David's face darkened as he looked at her. I clapped him on the shoulder and went to join my uncle and mother. My uncle had followed in my grandfather's footsteps, mastering both Eastern and Western medicine. He was not only a renowned surgeon, but also a master of traditional healing arts. After making the rounds with him, a commotion erupted on one side of the ballroom. "Go find your mother. David has Sophia," my uncle said, before hurrying toward the disturbance. I turned around to see my mother approaching, a glass of champagne in her hand and a calm smile on her face. "Ethan's out. The Rollins family posted his bail. He's here tonight." I frowned. Did Sophia convince him to try and poison me? Knowing Sophia, if that was her plan, she wouldn't be using anything subtle. After all, my mother only had 2 children. "Most likely. We'll have to wait for the police forensics to know for sure what it was," my mother said, her expression turning to ice. Her voice was cold steel. "I drew up my will a long time ago. The transfer agreement you signed also has binding clauses. Even if she succeeded in killing you, she wouldn't get a single penny from me." I nodded grimly. As we were speaking, Ethan's desperate, piercing scream cut through the ballroom. It was Sophia. She was going to drug him. "She wants to kill Caleb Shaw to inherit Shaw Industries. I just came here to apologize to Mrs. Shaw. I didn't want to hurt him." My mother and I exchanged a look and walked over. Both Ethan and Sophia were restrained by security. He was hysterical. She was silent, her head bowed, radiating a chilling aura. When she saw us approaching, a strange smile spread across her face. My internal alarm bell screamed. I instantly pulled my mother behind me just as Sophia lunged and kicked out hard. Sophia's hand flew open, and a small dagger clattered to the floor. The guards, recovering from their shock, quickly subdued her again. Ethan collapsed to the floor, paralyzed with fear, babbling incoherently. It had nothing to do with me. I didn't do anything. I didn't spare him a glance, instead helping my mother to a quiet corner to sit down. Sophia and Ethan were taken away. 2 days later, the investigation concluded. The siblings were formally arrested for attempted murder. It was perfect. A loving family of 4 all together again, doing hard time. Every dollar and piece of property Jennifer Rollins had gotten from my father was recovered. The 200 pounds of gold bar she had stashed in a bank's safe deposit box had nearly doubled in value. We considered it interest. 3 months later, the Jennings family was selling off its factories to cover its debts, teetering on the edge of bankruptcy. The trial for Mark Vance and Jennifer Rollins began, and I accompanied my mother to the courthouse to watch. Faced with a mountain of evidence, they confessed on the stand. I put my arm around my mother's shoulders, my voice light. "With all the charges combined, he'll probably get life. If not life, then at least 20 years. I don't think we'll have to worry about his retirement. We can just plan his funeral." My mother let out a laugh. She had waited 10 years for this day. The pain and struggle of her rehabilitation were all for this moment, to see that scumbag finally face justice. Mark Vance was sentenced to life in prison, and Jennifer Rollins received 20 years. Shortly after their sentencing, Ethan got 3 years, and Sophia got 7. My life, however, wasn't exactly peaceful. In between work, I was constantly being set up on dates. My mother, enjoying her leisurely retirement, took great pleasure in my suffering. My uncle joined in on the fun, too. He scheduled 4 blind dates for me every month, and attendance was mandatory. A world in which I was the only one suffering had been achieved.